Now let's turn our attention to this area right down here. It looks very similar to what we did up with the scope mount. In fact, we may even grab one of these and duplicate it and bring it down here to create these things here. But this particular piece is a little bit oddly shaped. The first thing I'll do is maybe grab some faces off of this piece. Since this seems to be molding to it, why don't we grab faces off of here, duplicate them, and then begin from that. So I'm going to go to my side view here, and let's try and figure out which faces we could use. It looks like we could use these faces here as kind of a template to build the rest of the piece off of. So let's go ahead and grab the rest of these faces here, like this. So let's duplicate these with Shift D, and then I'll immediately hit the Enter key without touching the mouse so I don't accidentally move them around. Now I'll hit the P key and separate those selected faces into its own object. So I'll choose Selection. And now if we go back into object mode, and if I select this area, you can see that now it's its own object. So let's move this to a new layer now. I'll press M and 4 to move that to layer 4, and here we are. I think also what I will do is remove the subsurface modifier for now. I'll just hit the X here. In addition, our pivot point is way over here from where the original object was. Let's move that back into the center of the geometry by coming over here to Set Origin and Origin to Geometry. Now we can move this around, scale it down in the Y, and kind of get it the proper size. What we now need to do is split it down the middle and then mirror it. So we only have to do the modeling on one side. So if I tab into Edit mode, let's place an edge right here, and then once again I'll hit that Enter key and one more time, and that will ensure that that edge is right down the center. Now I'll go to Face mode, and let's delete this side of the object. I'll hit X and choose Faces, and now we can come over here and choose the Mirror modifier, and there we go. So now it's being mirrored over, so as we model on one side, the other side will come along for the ride. So it looks here in this image like we have an extrusion coming off of this piece, as well as an extrusion coming down off of this piece as well. But I think the first thing I'd like to do is give it a little bit of thickness. So let's come over here to the Add Modifiers panel and choose Solidify. And now let's give it a little bit of thickness. I'll roll up the Mirror modifier so I can see the Solidify, and click and drag on the thickness here. I'll bring it in some, like this, and then I'll choose Even Thickness. It's a little difficult to see with it smoothed, so I'll come over here and I'll choose Flat Shading for now, so we can see the edges a little better. I'll bring back that main piece on layer 1 just to see how it's fitting around it, and it looks like it's a little bit too thin yet, so I'll press S and X and scale it out a little bit like this. So let's go ahead and apply the Solidify modifier, and then if we tab into Edit mode, let's delete the faces on the inside here. We aren't going to need those. So I'll just hit X and delete those faces. In addition, it looks like we've got faces right in here on the inside, and that isn't a good thing. We don't need that, so I'll delete those as well. Now let's go ahead and extrude the piece down to the bottom here. If I tumble around here, I think I can just insert an edge loop here, and then choose this face and extrude these down. Now we aren't seeing the faces selected on the other side because we haven't turned this little guy on quite yet, so I'll click there, and now we can see the edit cage on the other side as well. I'll go back to my side view and hit E and extrude down to here, let's say, right about here. Now there are a couple of other extrusions here. There's this piece here, and there's this piece over here. Now for this one, it looks like we're going to need an extra edge loop, so I'll press Control R and add an edge loop there. And then if we tumble around and grab these faces here, we should be able to extrude these straight out like that. If we tumble around, I think we can just select these faces here. It looks like this piece is a little bit out of alignment, so I'll just take that vertex and move it out like that. Now back to face mode, select these, and let's extrude these out with E, and I'll just pull those straight out. Now we need to extrude out of this piece to get this here. So let's go ahead and choose these faces here, and then we can press E and X and then drag these out like this. So let's go ahead and bring back that main piece on layer 1 and take a look. I think that's going to work out okay. I think that's sticking out from the sides far enough, because we're going to add some pieces onto this. But before we do that, let's go ahead and add some edges and a subdivision surface modifier. So I'll go back to just layer 4, and let's go ahead and add a modifier subdivision surface and bring it up to 2. And also in object mode, I'll come over here to shading and click smooth. Notice what happened here. There are a couple of things going on here. One is that we've got interior faces here. You can see them right in here. So we don't want that. We need to disable the mirror for a moment and delete those. So let's do that. Let's get rid of these interior faces. And I'll delete those. Now if we turn the mirror back on, you can see we've got a little bit smoother connection there. Now, if yours is looking a little different, notice if I move the subsurf up, we get kind of a break in the connection here. And that's because it matters what order modifiers are in the modifier stack. So if I move the subsurf back down in the stack, you can see it cleans that up quite a bit. However, I've got something happening over here that we need to troubleshoot as well. So if I tab into edit mode, you can see there's something going on in here, an extra face or edge here. It looks like if I go into edge mode and select this edge here and delete that edge and delete this one as well, looks like I have a few extras in here. There we go. So if you find that you have a couple of points that are pulling, go in and see if you can delete faces and edges to clean that up a bit. All right, let's go ahead and add a few edges to clean these edges up so they aren't quite so rounded. I'll tab into edit mode and let's go ahead and add a few here. All right, so I've added a few edge loops to hold those corners. Now let's add these pieces here, the ridges. If I go back to layer 1, I can find these up here that we created earlier. Now this still has the array modifier on it, and that's okay. I'm going to go ahead and duplicate it and then move it up, and then I'll take the array modifier off over here. Now I can move this and bring it over to the area where we need it. Now I have it in place right here. It looks to me like this one is a little bit thicker than these, so I'm just going to duplicate this and bring it over, and then I'll scale it in the Y just to make it a little bit thicker like this. There we go. Now what I can do is use the array modifier once again. So if I go to add modifier array, it looks like I need to change it from the x-axis here, so I'll put a 0 in the x field and a 1 in the y field. and then I'll click and drag in that Y field. Now let's go back to our side view and get a sense of how far this should be. So it looks like it should be right about there. Now I just need to increase the count. So I'll come over here to the count and increase that. And there we go. Now it looks like it's a little too much, so I'll click and drag in the Y and hold that Shift key down. Try and get it right where we want it. There we go. So now we have those pieces in place. In addition, it looks like there are the same type of pieces underneath here. So I'll just grab that piece with the array on it and duplicate it. And let's move this down and rotate this around the Y. And let's put this in place as well. I'll press Control 7 to go to the bottom view. And I'll drag this over like this. Get them in place. And then let's pull them up to get them in place like this. It looks like these are a little bit smaller, so maybe I'll press S and Y and scale them in just a hair like that. And then let's adjust the offset in the Y here, like so, and reduce the count. And there we go. Now we have these other two here. So what we can do is once again duplicate this. I'll press Shift D and Y and move that over here. And then I'll turn off the array modifier over here. I'll just hit the X. And now it looks as if we should scale this out in the Y like this. And perhaps take this edge and move it closer to the side so it sharpens that up a bit. And then this piece here looks like it angles. So what let's do is let's select this edge and move the cursor to it. Let's then select these faces here and we'll just angle them or rotate them at the point of the 3D cursor. So I'll come down here and change my pivot point to 3D cursor, and then I'll hit R and rotate and slide that like this. Now we need to scale it in the Z. I'll hit S and Z and scale that in the Z to bring that back up like that. Let's try that. Now I may be able to grab an edge here and move it. Let's go ahead and use edge slide. I'll press Control E and click edge slide, and I'll drag that over. There we go. Let's do the same thing with this other piece over here. I'll just grab this, change my pivot point to the median point, duplicate it, move it over here, turn the array off again or delete it, and then let's just scale this out and put this in place. I'll scale it in the Y, move it out about like this. And then I'll grab these edges, say one here and one here, and scale these in the Y to tighten those up a bit. And there we go. All right, let's go back to our perspective view and take a look at it. So now I just need to mirror these over to the other side, and we'll have that piece pretty much blocked out. So in the next video, let's take a look at creating these holes here in our main piece, and maybe we'll even begin thinking about this piece as well.